Hi everybody, Mike Beer here, taking a look at the feature race on the Sunday card at Monmouth Park. Race number 7 is a stakes race at 1.1 miles on the turf for 3-year-olds. It is the $100,000 Tail of the Cat. Let's take a look at this field right now. 8 horses entered, and the morning line favorite and horse to beat is number 8. Chad Brown sends in Portfolio Company off of a seasonal debut, a 3-year-old debut in the Grade 2 American Turf on the Kentucky Derby undercard, where this horse ran fine in that race. He set an overall pretty good trip in that race. You know, that Churchill turf course, which of course has been a little bit tricky for some horses to deal with. I don't know that Portfolio Company looked like he didn't handle it. He got a decent trip in that race. He had a shot at that race through the stretch. Just got a little tired at the end. It might have been a race that he really needed. He showed plenty of ability as a 2-year-old for Chad, even though he only won 1 of his 4 starts last year. He showed that he had a good amount of potential. I thought he ran fine off the layoff. The second choice on the morning line down on the rail is number 1, Quality G, for trainer Todd Pletcher. This horse prepped over this turf course the last time we saw him in the Jersey Derby and was defeated as a very heavy favorite that day. He has been gelded in the interim. He comes right back in the Tail of the Cat here, takes on just a little bit more distance. Again, this race at 1.1 miles. That race was at a mile. This horse has been in good form, though. He's run pretty well in all 4 starts so far in his career. He's 1 for 4. The wild card in the race is the number 6, Affable Monarch. This horse is 5-1 on the morning line, making his turf debut here for top connections. This horse has a big turf pedigree, at least on the dam side. He's run okay at all of his dirt starts. He is bred to get better on this surface, though. And the number 7, Fort Washington, who is 7-2 on the morning line, certainly has a shot to win this race. Another horse who's run pretty well in all of his starts so far. I guess that would be saved the last one, the Penn Mile, which was just run over a very boggy turf course at Penn National earlier this month, and this horse just did not pick his feet up that day. I think that's the race that you sort of want to give him a little bit of consideration for, just because that turf course was not in great condition. He didn't really seem like he liked it at all. He's run some good races as well, though. A horse who likes to sort of sit back and make one run into his races. So we'll see if the pace sets up for him along those lines. Why don't we look at the Timeform US pace projector for the race? The Timeform US does not give an advantage to either front runners or closers in this race. I think it's going to be fairly run. The number 5, Airspeed Velocity, they think is going to be out there on the lead in this race. Certainly possible. This horse just broke his maiden in his most recent start in front-running fashion. Didn't show any speed at all in his first 2 starts, although he did have trouble at the start, 2 starts back at Keeneland. In his last start, they got to the front with him. He just held on to wire that field and break his maiden, and Jimmy Toner, a trainer who really knows what he's doing. He steps this horse right up into a stakes race, showing a little bit of confidence in this horse. So we'll see if he can handle the rise in class here. They also, Timeform US expects Quality G, the number 1, to be forward in this race. And based on his races, I think that's a reasonable assumption. Let's take a look at Quality G right now. Horse who broke his maiden over the synthetic surface at Gulfstream Park the first time they stretched him out. He came back in his first turf start, his first start against other winners, and he ran really well at Belmont in that race 2 starts back. Was a big price that day. The horse that just nailed him on the wire, Napoleonic War, was another Chad Brown horse who was a very, very heavy favorite in that race. And Quality G, man, he really made that horse work to get up in that race. It didn't even look like Napoleonic War ever got by Quality G in that race, but he did get his nose down on the wire. Pretty tough beat for this horse at a big price. He came back for his next start. Pletcher brought him over here to Monmouth to run in the Jersey Derby. He was 3-5. We'll take a look at the stretch run right here. I mean, personally, didn't really see any excuse for this horse not to lose this race. He got a good trip overall. He did not make the lead in here. He was content to sit off of another horse around the track. He came up to challenge that horse around the final turn. He took over at the top of the stretch. You saw him briefly get clear there. He's on his wrong lead as the winner comes up to his outside here, and he just can't fight that horse off. He winds up getting outfinished by that one. He gets caught for second as well. He winds up settling for third as a very, very heavy favorite. I mean, it wasn't a terrible performance, but it wasn't a great one, that's for sure. He certainly didn't appear to have any excuse in that race. Again, he's been gelded in the interim. Pletcher's going to come right back into another stakes race with this horse. He's got a great post and he's got tactical speed. There are certainly things to like. I don't like that he did not win his prep for this race, though, because I didn't see his excuse not to do that. The number 2 is American Day. We'll see what happens here. This horse is a maiden on the way into this race, 2 starts back. Off the layoff, he was defeated in a maiden $40,000 claiming race. This horse also debuted for a tag on the main track and didn't win that day either, and was claimed out of that race. he looks like he's in a little bit steep in here. I guess it's at least worth pointing out that in his turf debut at the Meadowlands last October, he wound up finishing a pretty close second at a huge price, 85 to 1. And then in his most recent start here at Monmouth, they bumped him back up into a maiden special weight race, and he ran second again at a huge price, 65 to 1. He ran fine there, so he had a good trip in there. Never really looked like he was going to win, but he did well to get second at a big price. It's hard to make him the winner of this race, but I guess if nothing else, you can say he's outrun his odds more than once, and maybe he'll do it again in here. The number 3 is 02035, shipping in for trainer George Weaver. I think this horse has something to recommend him in here. He's already had his chances. I think there's a little bit of, sort of in and out with this horse. You don't always know what you're going to get, but I actually feel like his overall turf form is actually, pretty good. I feel like this horse has run some really, really nice races, and things haven't always gone, to his favor in some of his races. He ran really well in the Central Park at the end of last year on turf. He got bumped at the start, headstrong in that race, sort of going more forward in there. Actually drove to the lead in mid-stretch of that race, and just got, outfinished at the very end of that race on a head bomb. He ran really, really well that day. He's come back with 3 starts so far this year. In the Woodhaven off the left, where he was behind Fort Washington. Eric Hensel was riding that day. He's back aboard for this race. They just rated him from the start of that race and took him back, which is not how you have to ride this horse, but they just let him trail that field. He tried to swing up on that field around the turn. And I actually felt like he ran pretty well in that race. I don't think the trip did him any favors in that race. Not that the Woodhaven isn't a race that I love overall, but I didn't love the ride or trip that this horse got in that race. He was behind Quality G in that allowance race that we were talking about earlier, where Quality G really outran his odds in Napoleonic War. The big favorite just got up to win. This horse ran okay in that race. He didn't really have much of an excuse in there. He was only 3rd best. I don't have a big excuse for that race. And obviously that Penn Mile last time, which we already talked about. I mean, the turf course was really, really boggy. A mile in 142 and 1. And this horse was another one. He got up close in that race. He just didn't look like he really handled it. You could tell he was all done still on the backstretch of that race. I would just put a line through that one. He's got Lasix on for the first time here. He's run some okay races. I do think he's a little bit better than he looks on paper, and he'll probably be a fair price in this race. So I have no argument with anybody who wants to take a shot with him in this race. The number 4, Crabs and Beer, finally switched to turf for career start number 10. That was a 5.5 furlong sprint at Laurel, and he came from off the pace to win that day. That was a pretty good performance, 74 by his most recent start. Came in the Murphy at Pimlico on the Preakness undercard. Ran okay in that race. It was a decent field. I think this field's tougher than that one. And this horse just got a really good trip and ride in that race. I like what his rider did there. I think he sort of, targeted the runner-up there, the favorite, Ready to Perform. I think they targeted him as the horse to beat. So they just followed him around the track. That horse made a run 3 or 4 wide around the turn. Crabs and Beer just tailed him into the stretch and then took his shot. And he wasn't good enough. He couldn't make up any ground on the 1-2 finishers in there. But he did his best with a really good trip, and he was 3rd best at the end of the day. I think this race is probably tougher than that one, and he's going to have to find a way to improve if he's going to win here. Airspeed Velocity, we talked about, he finally got the maiden win last time. A little bit of a change of tactics. Again, he had trouble at the start 2 back, but last time he got out of the gate fine, and they just went to the lead with him, and he just held on in there. I thought overall that was a decent performance because the pace wasn't slow. He wasn't flying on the front end, but the pace wasn't slow. He went a legit pace in there, and he held on at the end. This is a pretty big step up in class for this horse, but trained by a really, really good trainer in Jimmy Toner, has some pedigree behind him here. He's still very lightly raced, and I think it's a pretty nice show of confidence that they're going to run him in this race. We'll see how he does. It's not an easy spot. Affable Monarch is one of the horses we referenced in the Open because I think he's, if nothing else, he's a real wild card in here. I actually feel like he's shown some real ability on the main track. His career debut was a really good performance right here at Monmouth, sprinting 6 furlongs on the dirt. He did not look like a sprinter at all in that race. Didn't have any speed from the gate. His rider just basically put him to a drive right from the start of there and made this horse work every step of the way. But he finally leveled into a run. He came through on the inside through the stretch, and he got away from that field. That was a good performance and a really nice win. I thought he got unlucky in the Rocky Run, his second career start, where they stretched him out over a sealed track at Delaware. He was second best to a good horse in that spot in Cook Creek. But this horse, he just didn't have a very good trip in that race. He didn't break well. Then his rider just pulled him back to last. Came wide into the stretch in that race, and he was finishing fast in that race. He just ran out of time, could not get up. Came off the layoff last time. Had some trouble around the first turn of that race, and I think just wound up out of position. And then he just didn't finished quite as strong in there, but he did pair up his top buyer as a 2-year-old, and now they make the surface switch for him. I'm not sure still how I feel about the Arrogates on turf. We'll see if they wind up, sort of sorting themselves out on that surface, but, you do expect this horse to get better with distance. And, as far as the pedigree goes on the dam side, you can't argue with it. His dam, Social Queen, who raced for these connections, was a multiple graded stakes winner on the grass. One of her foals, her best foal to date, is a half brother to this horse named Force the Pass, who was a Grade 1 winner and Grade 1 placed on the turf. He made over $1 million. This is supposed to be this horse's surface, and he's already shown he's got some ability on dirt. I think he could really improve here, and I think he's a dangerous horse. Fort Washington, I don't have any real knocks in this horse. I liked both of his starts as a 2-year-old last year. It felt like he was sort of learning as he went, and I liked the late finish he put in to just get up to break his maiden at Aqueducts back in November. 3 starts so far this year, all in stakes races. I thought he ran pretty well in the Tampa race, going the mile off the layoff in there. He came widest into the stretch of that race, and he wasn't a real threat in there, but I liked the way that he finished up. It looked like they were maybe giving him that race. I don't know that they had him fully cranked up for that race. He rallied at the end. He galloped out well past the wire. He came back, and I thought he was a little disappointing in the Woodhaven, even though he improved to a new top buyer in that race. The Woodhaven, first of all, is not a race that I really like overall. And I just didn't, feel like this horse ran, that well in that race. He was no match for Unanimous Consent, who's actually a really good horse. So it's no problem for him to be defeated by him. But he was pretty desperate to get up for second in there. I don't know. I just didn't feel like he ran that well. I'm going to give him a pass for the Penn Mile. This is a horse who wants to sit back, I think, and sort of make one run into his races. So we'll see if the pace sets up for him. I do think he has a lot of upside. I think he can improve, and maybe he'll do it now. I just haven't really been thrilled so far with his form as a 3-year-old, but I do like this horse. Number 8 is Portfolio Company. He's the horse to beat for Chad Brown. Only 1 for 5 so far, but he was good breaking his maiden at Saratoga last year. You could tell even early on in this horse's career, he was a very, very hard horse to ride, very rank and headstrong, didn't really look like he wanted to be taken a hold of in his races. So they went forward when he broke his maiden at Saratoga. In the With Anticipation, his next start, he was really headstrong as they tried to rate him. And as a matter of fact, they rated him probably into defeat in that race. They let Coinage make the front and just walk on the slowest of paces in there. And this horse actually took a game run at him, but he couldn't catch him in the stretch. I think they probably made a mistake by rating him in that race. He came back in his next start in the Pilgrim, and we'll look at the replay of the Pilgrim right now because this horse ran really well in this race. He's in against Annapolis, a very highly regarded horse for trainer Todd Pletcher. And Portfolio Company just hooks up with Annapolis from a long way out in this race, and you can see through the stretch they are dueling. Portfolio Company does not give an inch in here. He comes away second best in here. He can't quite fend off Annapolis, but boy, did he run well in this race with an 88 buyer speed figure. Just missed at the end. That was a good performance. They came back in the Breeders' Cup. They sent him to the lead in that race, and he wound up getting tired, steadily tiring through this stretch. He didn't run poorly. He didn't run great either, but that was obviously a pretty tough spot for him, and Closers obviously did very well in that Breeders' Cup juvenile turf race. Off the layoff, again, the only start so far this year, Churchill Downs in the Grade 2. He had a good trip in that race. He had no real excuse. Even though he was down towards the inside of that turf course, which may not have been a great place to be. He still ran fine, though. I feel like this is a horse who could take a pretty big step forward here. He's got a great post on the outside. He has Lasix on now for the first time in his career. And I just think Chad has found a really good spot to ship him into, dropping out of several graded stakes races, maybe just to get his confidence up a little bit. Chad, just feels like every time he sends his stakes horses over to Monmouth to run on the turf, it just feels like they all show up and they almost always win, it seems like. So I just feel like it's a good spot for Portfolio Company. I don't think you're going to get the 5-2 on the morning line, but we'll see how they wind up betting it. I put them on top. Here's the picks for the Tail of the Cat, race number 7 at Monmouth on Sunday. I went 8, 6, 7, and 1. I'm interested in, I think Portfolio Company is going to be tough. I'm interested to see what we get from Affable Monarch, first time turf though. I'm going to chalk it out with Portfolio Company. Tail of the Cat, race number 7 at Monmouth on Sunday. Good luck.